Hey everyone, Crow back here again, and man, has it been a long time since my last Evercade video. When was that? Like March? Jeez. Well, I had to take a bit of a break from the Evercade for a while in order to get some other stuff done, and it actually took me quite a while to get through Tomb Raider Collection 1, which includes the first 3 Tomb Raider games in the series. I mean, according to my stats, I spent around 22 hours in the first game, over 30 hours in the second game, and nearly 36 hours in the third game. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why it's taken me a while to get to this one. I should point out that all 3 of the games in this collection are the PlayStation versions, because not only were these games originally released on multiple platforms, but there are also remastered versions out there as well. Now, I'm going to talk more about these games one at a time in the order they were released. But first, I have to bring up an issue some people might have when other people talk about the Tomb Raider games, and that's the pronunciation of the main character's name, Lara Croft. Now, some people have an issue when her name is pronounced Laura Croft, but to those people, you gotta understand that Lara is not a common name in the United States. I'm actually going to be struggling in this video to pronounce her name correctly because I myself have a tendency to call her Laura Croft, because it's just more natural for me to say it that way rather than Lara Croft. So if you hear me say Laura Croft in the video, it just means that I slipped and I didn't catch myself to re-record it. So, with that out of the way, let's get on to our first game. So I actually thought that the original Tomb Raider was first released on PlayStation and then ported to other platforms afterwards. But when I looked it up, apparently the game was released on PlayStation, Saturn, and PC around the same time in November of 1996. In fact, the Saturn version may have actually been released in October of that year in some regions. The game was developed by Core Design and released by Eidos Interactive in North America and Europe, and in Japan it was released by Victor Interactive Software. Now this is a game I actually bought back in 1996 or 97. I remember being in a Toys R Us, looking at the wall of PlayStation games, and looking for a new game to buy. I bought Tomb Raider solely based on the box. I didn't know anything about the game beforehand. It just kind of looked interesting. I played it for a couple weeks, got stuck somewhere pretty early on in the game, gave up and moved on to something else. And I never played this game or any other Tomb Raider game again until this Evercade release. Tomb Raider is a third-person action-adventure game where you control Lara Croft having an Indiana Jones-esque adventure. And yeah, it's pretty obvious that this is inspired by the Indiana Jones movies. Remember in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Indiana Jones is chased by a huge boulder? Well, yeah, of course you do. It's an iconic scene. Well, the same thing happens to Lara. Many, many times throughout the course of the game. Hey, talk about having some bad luck. Now I've heard people mention that this game has tank controls for controlling Lara, and that just never made any sense to me. Now Lara does move like a tank at times. She moves forwards, backwards, and then will pivot in place to face another direction. But she can also sidestep and perform multiple types of jumps, which I believe tanks can't do. But my main point is that tanks are controlled with 2 levers that control the speed and direction of each tank tread individually. And Lara is not controlled with 2 levers. No, you use a good old-fashioned digital controller. This original game never supported analog controls, so the Evercade handhelds and VS controllers worked just fine for this game. I actually used the PS4 controller on my Evercade VS to play this, just because I always felt like this was a PlayStation game, despite it having been released on more platforms. I could have used the controller from the PlayStation Classic, but there's no button available on that thing to pull up the Evercade menu, and believe me when I say that I pulled up the Evercade menu a lot while playing this game, saving and loading game states. But if you want to get used to the controls, there's a separate option on the main menu that lets you run around Lara's house, and she actually tells you how to perform most of her basic moves. I just had to mention this because I'd read somebody's review of the game that claimed that there was no tutorial and the game just throws you into the first level without telling you what to do. And I'm like, did you not select Lara's home on the main menu? Because that's the tutorial. They just kept it separate from the main game. Anyway, one of the things I liked about this game was that most of the focus was on maneuvering through the environments. Sure, you've got to find keys and switches to open doors and passageways, but what I'm really talking about is when you see an area you want to get to, but the way to get there isn't immediately apparent, and you've got to start investigating the environment. Can you jump high enough to grab a ledge? Or maybe you can cross the chasm with a running jump. And once you get used to the controls and how Lara reacts, it actually becomes very easy to know where to make your jumps and maneuvers because all the levels are broken up into these very visible cubed sections. And this makes the platforming more about puzzle solving than timing. But that's not to say that timing isn't important. But you don't have to be super precise, as the window for when Lara reacts to actions is really based on her placement rather than timing. Well, in most cases. There are also well-hidden areas in the game that you'll occasionally find, and there's this distinctive chime that plays when you find one. Usually there's some good stuff for you to pick up in these secret areas, but as far as I'm aware, you don't really get any reward for finding them all other than the items you find. There is combat in the game as well, and by combat I mean gun shooting. You can have your guns out or holster them, but if you're holding them, you can't do most of your maneuvers like grabbing onto ledges, and if you're in the water, you just can't use your guns at all. But the nice thing is if the guns are out, Lara will automatically aim at any threat she sees, and you can just fire away. And if it's one thing this game loves to do, it's to trigger threats to attack you just when you reach a certain spot that makes things difficult to fight, or it just surprises you because you weren't expecting it. On real hardware, this would be a pain in the neck. But here on the Evercade, the save states really lessen the blow of lost progressions due to surprises like that. One thing about the game that I had remembered incorrectly was that I thought you had limited ammo, and if you ran out, you just couldn't shoot anymore. But that's not entirely true. The pistols that Lara has at the beginning of the game have unlimited ammo. However, you could find other guns, like the Magnum, shotgun, and Uzi, and those guns are much better than the pistols, but those are the guns that have limited ammo, and you'll have to collect more throughout the game. And that leads me to the question, why is this ammo just laying around these ancient tombs? I mean, not just ammo, but ammo that's compatible with the guns that you're carrying. Well, I mean, that's video game logic for you. I mean, you could also question why some of these tombs are so well lit when there's no obvious light source. And what kind of power source is being used to activate these traps? How is this pendulum constantly swinging without losing momentum? Also, how does this dude manage to ambush me throughout the game when there's no way he could have gotten there before me? And why can he take 100 bullets before just deciding to run off? Well, it's all video game logic. Now, this may sound weird, but my absolute favorite thing about this game has always been Lara Croft dying, especially falling from great heights. I don't know what it is, but it just makes me laugh every time, or at least get a good chuckle out of me. And I remember when I accidentally learned how to do a swan dive and Lara dove headfirst into the ground below, and I was stunned that they'd let me do that. And I don't know what it is about it, but I just had to see her do it again and again and again and again, and it never got old for me. And what makes the Evercade version so good to me is the save states. Because now, if I want to kill Lara Croft, I just have to perform a save state, kill her, laugh, and then reload that save state. Now don't get me wrong, it's also incredibly useful for getting through tricky spots in the game, but I think part of the reason I spent so much time on this game was because I purposely kept killing Lara in as many different ways as I could. I probably killed her well over 100 times, on purpose. Now relax, I'm not a psychopath, I wouldn't want to see a real person get injured in those ways, but this is a video game, so relax. Now, this game had 15 levels, and it was a lot longer than I was expecting. I pretty much played on my own, but if I got stuck for a while, I'd consult a guide to get me moving again. The odd thing I found is that I enjoyed it more and more the further I got into the game. I never got tired of playing it. And I almost started playing the game again from the beginning, seeing as how you get to start your second playthrough with all the guns and unlimited ammo for all of them. The only real flaw with this game is the camera. You can't control it, except if you hold the look button, but then you can't move while you're doing that. It's kind of really bad in some cases, like when your back is up against a wall, because the camera rotates to show your face. And if you need to make a jump or something, you kind of just have to do it blind. It's something I got used to, but I wasn't really happy about it. So in the end, I gotta give this one a 9 out of 10. And with that, I'll leave you with my favorite line of dialogue from the game, which I find even better when taken out of context.
Too late for abortions now.
Not without the heart of the operation.
No!
So about a year after the release of Tomb Raider, in November of 1997, we get the release of Tomb Raider 2. And as with the first game, it's developed by Core Design and published by Eidos Interactive in North America and Europe, and again published by Victor Interactive Software in Japan. Now, I really didn't know anything about any of the Tomb Raider sequels. And really, the only thing I knew about this game was that you could make Lara explode. The story, as I understand it, is that when the first Tomb Raider was out there were these rumors that there was a code that would make Lara nude. Of course, there was nothing like that in the game, but I guess there were people out there that just wanted Lara nude. So they put a code in Tomb Raider 2 and let rumors spread that this code would actually make Lara Croft nude, when in reality, it would just make her explode. And I find that so much more entertaining. Now, the method to do this is mentioned in the game description on the Evercade, though it doesn't say exactly what it'll do. You step forward, step backwards, turn around 3 times, and do a backflip. But for a while, I had trouble getting it to work for some reason. But then I found a better way to do it. Sidestep right, sidestep left, step forward, step backwards, spin around 3 times, and then jump. And it doesn't even matter if you backflip, jump straight up, or jump forward. It'll just work regardless of which way you jump. Anyway, the fact that I brought this up first when talking about this game just shows that, like with the previous game, I just got so much entertainment out of watching Lara Croft die. But for the most part, Tomb Raider 2 is very much like the first game, with a tweak here or there and a few new things added. The very first thing I noticed was that the controls were slightly altered to accommodate the fact that you'll need to use flares in the game to help see in some dark areas. And you know what? That makes sense. I had mentioned that it was odd in the first game that there was always light everywhere you went, even though there really shouldn't have been. The default controls had slightly changed as well. The R2 and L2 buttons were used to sidestep in the first game, but here that's changed. Holding R2 lets you sidestep with the D-pad, and L2 will light flares and throw them. And I didn't like this change because I was so used to sidestepping with R2 and L2 that I kept accidentally wasting flares. Fortunately, you can change the controls to be exactly like the first Tomb Raider game, and the only downside is that you'd have to enter the menu to select and use the flares. But I much preferred that than wasting flares accidentally all the time. In addition to flares, Lara has a few new weapons to use as well, such as the M16 assault rifle, the grenade launcher, and the harpoon gun. Now the harpoon gun kinda sucks, but at least now Lara has a way to attack threats while she's underwater, something she couldn't do in the first game. Another new feature is the ability to ride on some vehicles in a couple levels. You'll get to control a speedboat on a level or 2 and a snowmobile on another. They felt a little wonky to control at times, but it was a nice change of pace to have a bit of variety in there. And speaking of variety, I've gotta mention the Barkhang Monastery level, because the whole game you've been going up against these cult members that keep popping out of nowhere. But in this monastery level, there are these monks that are wandering around, and if these cult members show up, the monks will actually fight them, and you could just stand there and watch. If the monks kill the cult member, you could just run over to the body and pick up anything they drop. But if the monks are defeated, well, you've got to finish the cult member off yourself. Now, you could try and help the monks, but I never wanted to attempt that because Lara's auto-aim will target the cult members and the monks. And if you accidentally attack a monk, well, then every single monk you encounter from that point on will attack you, and you'll have to fight all the cult members yourself. It's kind of a cool mechanic, but at the same time not really, due to the fact that you can't really help the monks without accidentally hitting them. So it's best to not even try. Well, not unless you want to kill all the monks for some reason. There are still secrets to find in the game, but it's handled differently than the first game. Instead of finding hidden areas with items to collect, there are 3 dragon statues to collect in every level. A stone dragon, a jade dragon, and a gold dragon. Sometimes they're well hidden, and other times they're just hard to collect. You don't get anything unless you collect all 3 dragon statues in a level. But the second you collect the 3rd one, you'll automatically receive a whole bunch of ammo and items which vary from level to level. I don't know if I like this system because, at least in the first game, you got something for pretty much every secret you found. But here, if you only manage to collect 2 of the 3 dragon statues in the level, you don't get anything. Another thing that's vastly different in this game compared to the first one is that you're not really getting attacked by wildlife in most of the game. Instead, in level after level for most of the game, you're fighting against cult members. The game starts you out in China and you're getting attacked by tigers and birds and spiders, but then you encounter your first cult member, and the next thing you know, you're getting attacked by only cult members for the next 10 or so levels. All through Italy, an offshore rig, a sunken ship, and Tibet. Okay, so there's a couple of sharks and other dangerous fish and other minor wildlife in there as well. But mostly, it's Lara killing other people for what seems like 80% of the game. And I was just not expecting that. In the first game, there were only like 3 or 4 people that you had to shoot at. But here, the body count has to be in the hundreds. I mean, it even goes on after you defeat the final boss of the game. Because then, after that, there's a level where the cult members attack Lara in her own home. I kind of really didn't like that. And I'm sorry, but I'm kind of gonna spoil a little bit of the ending here. But I didn't appreciate Lara killing me at the end of the game. Oh wait, I probably deserved it considering how many times I killed her. Huh. Anyway, this was ultimately an improvement over the first game. But those camera issues are still here, so the game still isn't perfect. There's a lot of points in the game that are trial and error. I mean, things like traps triggering when you hit certain spots on the floor, and you really can't avoid it unless you know about it in advance. But you know what? That's kind of the deal with these games. There's a lot of a trial and error involved. But thank goodness for save states, right? And since the game is trying to do more than the first one, the slowdown that occurs can be more noticeable and more frequent. And there's sometimes these weird glitches and oddities that can occur as well. But you know what? Those glitches and oddities, that stuff I find entertaining as well. I wouldn't ding the game for that. But even though I find that this game is overall better than the first game, I've still got to give it the same score, 9 out of 10. Alright, Tomb Raider 3, Adventures of Lara Croft, released about a year after Tomb Raider 2, late in 1998, and like the previous 2 games, it was developed by Core Design and was originally published by Eidos Interactive in all regions this time, even Japan. So one thing is clear about this game. They wanted to make this game substantially bigger and better than the last 2. They succeeded in improving some things, and others, not so much. Lara has acquired a few new moves. Pressing R2 will cause Lara to sprint as long as her stamina will hold out, and L2 will cause her to crouch and crawl on the ground. In addition to crawling on the ground, Lara can now hang from certain areas and monkey swing across. I thought that these were good additions because it allows for levels that are a bit more complex. What had to be sacrificed, though, was using L2 and R2 to sidestep, which now has to be done by pushing left and right on the D-pad while holding R1. I'm not a huge fan of this because in the other 2 games I was able to rotate Lara while sidestepping, and it's just not possible here with the new layout. Oh, and speaking of controls, this was the first Tomb Raider game to support analog sticks, and it took me so long to get to this game that analog support was already available for this game on the Evercade VS when I played it. And I was looking forward to it, thinking that this game would be much easier to play, and I was wrong. I tried playing for about 20 minutes with the analog sticks before switching back to the D-pad. The problem is that the game really wasn't built with analog controls in mind. Just like the first two games, everything is laid out in a cubed grid layout, and when you use the D-pad, you know exactly how far Lara's gonna move, and it's just easier to position yourself to where you need to be to perform jumps and things like that. Also, if you use the R1 button to walk, you know that Lara isn't gonna accidentally walk off a cliff, which is something I could see myself screwing up easily using the analog controls. So yeah, I abandoned them pretty quickly. As for weapons, it's almost pretty much identical to what you had in Tomb Raider 2, except now you can get a rocket launcher. There is a wider array of vehicles you'll encounter occasionally throughout the game, and that's always good for a change of pace. Lara will be operating a quad bike, a kayak, a boat, a minecart, and an underwater propulsion unit. Most of these are okay to control, but wow, the kayak and the underwater propulsion unit can really be hard to control sometimes. The secret areas are also pretty much back to the way they were in the first game, except there's a bigger incentive to find them all because that unlocks a bonus level. It doesn't really have anything to do with the game's story, it's just there for you to play after you've beaten the game. And I doubt that many people are actually going to get this hidden level because I was playing this game with a guide and I was purposely trying to get all the secrets just so I could see this bonus level, but I still somehow missed some of them. Fortunately, there are cheat codes you can enter in so you could see that special level anyway without finding all the secrets, but yeah, it still was kind of disappointing I didn't get to find them all while I was playing. But I was following a guide pretty strictly, and I don't know how I missed so many secrets. Now, I feel like they tried to make this game too big for the hardware it's running on. While all three games ran at around 30 frames per second, it feels like the frame rate in this third game drops far more frequently, and that can make the controls feel a bit sluggish and unpredictable when it happens. Another thing I noticed is that in the first two games, when you killed somebody or something, the body would always remain on the ground for however long you were in that level. In this third one, they always disappear, usually the second you stop looking at it. You can kill something, look away, look back, and the body's just gone. Now, all of that is probably due to technical limitations, but there are other things that I found to be kind of annoying. The same camera issue from the first two games are here, but in some scenarios, like when you're hanging from the ceiling and you're looking for a place to land safely, you can't do it. You can't move the camera to look down at all, so you have no idea what you're hanging over until you let go and find out. And then I always had issues with sprinting because you already have to be moving when you press R2 in order to sprint. If you're standing in place and you press up and R2 at the same time, Lara doesn't move. You have to make sure you're moving before you press R2. The game is very picky about that for some reason. And then, when you're sprinting and you press the jump button, you would expect Lara to jump even further than the standard running jump, but she doesn't jump at all. She does a roll on the ground, which is not what I expected her to do when I pressed the jump button. Another change I can't understand involves picking up items. It can sometimes be very difficult to tell what you're picking up off the ground. In the first Tomb Raider games, when you picked up an item, it showed you what you picked up in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. In Tomb Raider 3, nothing. Most of the time, I had no clue what I was collecting. Like I've already said, I followed a guide for most of the game, and sometimes the only way I knew there was an item on the ground was that the guide told me there would be something there. That's right. I literally couldn't tell there were items on the ground to pick up sometimes. The cherry on the cake has to be this guy who dropped a health pickup in the middle of a support column, which I was still able to pick up somehow, but it was only because of the guide that I knew he was supposed to have dropped something. And yeah, I ran across glitches and weird stuff happening in all three of the games, but I think some of the ones I ran across in this game have been the most bizarre. But you know what? I'm not going to hold that against the game. I kind of like seeing the weird glitchy stuff happening in games, especially if it's not going to hinder me, which in this case it wouldn't have because of save states. Now, the Tomb Raider games have always had a bit of a trial and error methodology to them, and that's fine. But this game purposely does stuff that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Like there's this one switch that's in the game where its only purpose is to kill you. You flip the switch and it activates flames right below your feet. There's no other use for it. We're on the third Tomb Raider game here, and every time there was a switch, it was for gaining access to something or some area. So of course every player is gonna pull that switch unless they were warned about it ahead of time. That's something I just find unnecessarily cruel. Here's another thing I really didn't like. After you finish the first set of levels in India, you're given the option to go to Nevada, London, or the South Pacific. You eventually have to play all those levels, you just get to choose the order in which you want to play them. Normally that would be fine. The problem here is that after the first Nevada level, you lose all your items, and you don't get them back. All the guns, ammo, flares, health packs that you've collected so far, all gone. It sucks bad enough when it happens when you choose Nevada first, but at least you get to rebuild your inventory for the final levels of the game. If you happen to choose Nevada last, you're gonna lose everything you collected in India, London, and the South Pacific, and you're not gonna be able to stockpile that much stuff for the final Antarctica levels. I mean, at that point you might as well restart the game, now knowing not to pick Nevada last. I wonder just how many people unknowingly made the game harder for themselves back in the day because they picked Nevada last. And it's because of stuff like this that I have to give this one a lower score than the first two games. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. I mean, it's still a really good game, but it's a bit more frustrating than the first two for multiple reasons. Alright, time to rank this card against every other Evercade card I've looked at so far. And with 2 games with a 9 out of 10 and 1 game at an 8 out of 10, this will fall on the B level in between Sunsoft Collection 1 and Data East Collection 1. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for Tomb Raider Collection 1. Next, I'll be looking at this, Thalamus Collection 1. Hopefully it doesn't take me 4 months to get through this one. See you next time.